For nearly a month now, pretty much every college campus in the country has made it clear that decolonization means basically kill whitey. It's long been obvious that this is always what the left meant by decolonization, as I outlined on this show a few weeks ago. But after Hamas's attack on Israel, activist groups have made it explicit. They want similar murders to happen in this country. They don't view their enemies as human, and they basically want them exterminated. Now, for its part, the establishment left didn't quite join in on these calls for violence, at least not directly and explicitly, but that's all starting to change, especially when you look at what was posted online at the outlet Salon yesterday, which passes for mainstream among leftists, I suppose. And it published an op-ed from a journalist named Brian Karam. Now, in no uncertain terms, the point of this op-ed is to justify the dehumanization of conservatives, and in particular, conservative Christians. Karam's piece is titled, MAGA and Christian Nationalism, Bigger Threat to America Than Hamas Could Ever Be. And this article went viral the other day. Elon Musk tweeted about it a few times, caused a lot of outrage. What a lot of people are missing is that this op-ed is just the latest iteration of a long line of op-eds from this same guy in Salon that accused conservatives of being terrorists. In fact, just a month ago, Karam wrote a piece in Salon entitled, Hamas and the GOP are both terrorist groups. It's just a matter of degree. Now, in that article, Karam asserted, quote, there's little or no difference between most of the GOP leadership, including Jim Jordan and Donald Trump, and the leaders of Hamas. Both groups will do anything they can to win. Both groups have engaged in atrocities. Both groups continue to lie. Both groups use human beings as hostages. Both groups are extremely dangerous. Both groups threaten to the world's internal and external peace. The fact is, many Americans viscerally understand this. Donald Trump and his followers are terrorists. And of course, you listen to that and you wonder, well, when has Donald Trump held people hostage? What atrocities did he commit? As melodramatic and deranged as that op-ed was, no one paid any attention to it whatsoever. So this week, Karam basically rewrote the same article, except he added a little more bite to it this time around. And before I get any further into specifics of this unhinged screed, it's important to emphasize a couple things. First of all, Karam is not an intern or a random troll or anything like that. He's the former senior White House correspondent for Playboy, and for years he's been a credentialed member of the White House press pool. This is one of the most coveted positions among mainstream journalists. Back when we had journalistic standards, it used to mean something to be a White House correspondent, but we don't have journalistic standards anymore, and so Brian Karam is free to publish op-eds saying that his domestic political opponents are worse than Hamas terrorists who kill civilians, while retaining his White House press credentials. In a serious country, if you write something like that, you're not going to be invited into the White House press pool. But again, we're not a serious country. The other important point to emphasize is that while I'm going to refer to Karam's writing specifically in this monologue, he's far from the only prominent figure on the left who feels this way. First of all, whatever editors still work at Salon had to approve his pieces and publish them. But more to the point, the leaders of the Democratic Party have been demonizing their political opponents using these terms and in this way for years, and doing it in ways that are not that dissimilar to what Karam is doing. It was just a year ago, who can forget, that Joe Biden all but declared war on quote-unquote MAGA Republicans, calling them a threat to democracy for disagreeing with him. Let's relive that moment together.
Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Now, I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans, are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country.
So there's Joe Biden doing something, by the way, that we're used to it now from him, but that is unprecedented and that presidents don't generally do, which is openly demonizing not just political opponents. I mean, that's been done before. But voters, like normal voters. MAGA Republicans, of course, include Donald Trump's supporters, and there's millions of them. That's something Donald Trump himself never did. He never demonized voters. He demonizes or he attacks people who attack him, especially politicians and celebrities and those sorts of people. He doesn't go after normal voters. Joe Biden does. And so there he is standing in front of the Marines with the blood red backdrop, shaking his fists and telling the country that democracy means voting for Joe Biden. Everyone who doesn't vote for Joe Biden, by contrast, is a terrorist. And we saw that kind of rhetoric constantly last year, around the same time as Joe Biden's diatribe about MAGA Republicans. Various outlets, including the Daily Beast, labeled me a stochastic terrorist. They use the same term to describe libs of TikTok and many others. And it's a term that means nothing, basically, but sounds vaguely intelligent, I guess, so you hear it all the time now. It also has very clear implications. Everyone instinctively agrees that terrorists should be killed. They're a threat to the country. So when you call someone a terrorist, well, it's not hard to connect the dots. But this Salon piece still stands out for how blatant and flagrant it is. Here's how the piece begins. Quote, "The House of Representatives, now run by Mike Johnson, offers a discount version of the apocalyptic orgasm that holy rollers have dreamed of for years. They've renewed the Inquisition and seem determined to convert the U.S. into a theocracy run by people who will thump you with the Bible but haven't read much of it." Now, at this point, you're probably wondering, where has that happened? What is he talking about? Where have Republicans done anything that could be remotely compared to the Inquisition? Now, of course, the Inquisition gets a bad rap anyway, but that's a topic for a different day. But in what way is Mike Johnson ushering in a theocracy? Is he proposing making church attendance compulsory? Has he tried to pass a law forbidding the practice of non-Christian religions? Has he burned any atheists at the stake recently? As far as I know, the answer is no on all counts. It appears that he has earned the label of theocrat simply because he's a Christian with conservative political views. And that might not seem like a big deal to you if you're a well-adjusted, sane person, but the left-wing media, of course, is comprised of people who are neither of those things. And for a long time now, Brian Karem specifically has viewed Christians who hold conservative political views as demonic. Here he was in the White House Rose Garden just a couple of years ago during the Trump presidency explaining that conservatives are, quote, eager for demonic possession. Watch.
Don't be sad. Don't be sad.
No, I'm just standing around. This is a group of people that are eager for demonic possession.
Demonic possession.
You're a son of a right? Yeah. You're calling yourself a journalist. You're threatening me now in the White House. In the Rose Garden. You're threatening me in the Rose Garden. You are a punk. You're not a journalist. You're a punk. Go home. Go home. Good job.
Hey, just for the record, he'd kick your punk ass.
Oh, and that's a measure of everything.
The real journalist, thank you.
Now, I'm not exactly sure what eager for demonic possession is even supposed to mean, to be honest, but at the time, a handful of commentators chastised Brian Karem for acting out. They praised Sebastian Gorka for putting him in his place. But in reality, his outburst was a revealing moment. He was echoing an increasingly common view on the left, which is that conservatives, in particular Christians, need to be eliminated. They need to be exorcised. This is a view that wasn't advertised widely a couple of years ago, but you see it all over the place now. A couple of days ago, for example, Rolling Stone ran a detailed hit piece on Johnson, focusing on his work at Alliance Defending Freedom for nearly a decade. In that capacity, Johnson advanced legal positions that are completely consistent with his faith. He opposed his faith. He opposed sodomy. He rejected the Supreme Court ruling that legalized gay marriage. And he wrote an op-ed predicting correctly that the so-called LGBTQ movement, left unchallenged, will be, quote, the harbinger of chaos and sexual anarchy that could doom even the strongest republic. Now, you could disagree with Mike Johnson's views, but there's no denying that every single one of them is consistent with a Christian worldview. He was also undeniably correct in that prediction, as recent events have repeatedly shown. In fact, his views are completely consistent with the Democratic Party's platform circa about 2006. The 2008 version of Barack Obama wouldn't take issue with any of it, at least not publicly. And yet, back when most people thought like this across the political spectrum, we were not living, as the media now predicts, in a theocratic dystopian wasteland. In fact, most people would agree we were living in by almost every measure, a better country. With everything going on in the world, there's no better time to build a daily habit of prayer and meditation. Building a habit of prayer can help cultivate an attitude of gratitude. Focusing on what you're thankful for can increase positive emotions and improve overall well-being. Hallow is the #1 Christian prayer app in the U.S. It's helped me maintain a daily prayer routine, and it can help you too. Download the app for free at hallow.com/Matt Walsh. You can set prayer reminders and track your progress along the way. Not sure where to start? Well, check out Father Mike Schmitz's Bible in a Year, available on the Hallow app for brief daily readings and reflections, or pray alongside Mark Wahlberg, Jim Caviezel, even some world-class athletes. With Hallow, you can customize a personal prayer plan that works for you. Listen wherever you are with downloadable offline sessions. Using Hallow to connect with others who share your beliefs and values can provide a sense of belonging, support, and foster a sense of community. Hallow also just added a section of their app called Prayers for Peace for Israel. You can download Hallow at hallow.com/Matt Walsh and get an exclusive 3 months free. That's 3 months absolutely free at hallow.com/Matt Walsh. Now, Karam's piece doesn't grapple with any of this. Instead, in something of a manic rage, he goes on to ramble about everything from Israel bombing a refugee camp in Gaza to artificial intelligence to the dangers of climate change. Quote, "That is our world today. It took an asteroid the size of a modern city to wipe out the dinosaurs. People, being smarter than dinosaurs, have figured out how to destroy everything all by ourselves. Climate change is slowly creeping up on us, and we are killing each other at an increasing rate. It took a Category 5 hurricane to kill 40-odd people in Acapulco last week. We killed that many in 2 mass shootings in the U.S. in about the same amount of time and spared the property. Pogo was right. We have met the enemy, and he is us." Now, I'll pause here to note, as I did a few days ago, that when the left talks about mass shootings, they love to imply that it's always, quote-unquote, MAGA Republicans who are doing the shooting. Get a lot of mileage out of that, but that's almost never the case in the overwhelming number of cases, including one of the shootings that Karam appears to be referencing there. These mass shootings are taking place in overwhelmingly black neighborhoods. More than a dozen people were shot by a felon at a Halloween party in Chicago just a couple of days ago. You probably didn't hear much about that in the media, but it did happen. That's a mass shooting. But we don't talk about it as much because it's not the result of Christianity or Christian nationalism or Trump supporters or MAGA Republicans. Maybe the reason the media buries any mention of these mass shootings in black communities is that if they covered them, then everyone would realize what an absurd and counterfactual talking point all of this is. But even if you accept everything that Karam says, even if you suspend reality for a second and agree that MAGA Republicans are somehow doing all these mass shootings, it still wouldn't come close to supporting his thesis, which is that conservatives are a terrorist group that are more dangerous to Americans than Hamas. There are well over 200 million Christians in this country. If you polled those Christians, you would find 0% support for murdering non-believers. Like literally 0%. There would not be any enthusiasm at all for gunning down elderly women at bus stops. By contrast, the founding charter of Hamas calls for genocide. Every single militant of Hamas wants to murder non-Muslims, and in particular Jews. And as we've learned recently, some of these militants could easily be entering this country through the southern border. Now, of course, the media knows this. Brian Karam knows that. So do his editors, and so does the rest of the media. The reason there will be no condemnation from anyone, from the left-wing media to the White House press corps to the Biden administration, is that they understand what he's really getting at here. He's not really trying to make any meaningful point about Hamas or artificial intelligence or climate change. He's trying to communicate the same message that Joe Biden did 1 year ago, except he's putting a finer point on it. And that message is that many on the left want their political opponents to be eliminated, to die. They don't just want them to lose elections. They don't just want to censor them. They want to dehumanize them, criminalize them, and worse, a lot worse. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.